After 3 years of dedication to Meridian Financial, my boss fired me the day after I filed a harassment complaint against him. What he didn't know was that my best friend Detective Colleen Roman had been waiting for someone brave enough to speak up. When a terrified colleague whispered, "Be careful," as I cleaned out my desk, I knew something was deeply wrong. That night, I finally got into his locked office and discovered files that would destroy not just his career, but expose a systematic cover-up that had silenced dozens of women for years. By morning, everything he'd built would crumble, and justice would finally have its day. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The words hit me like ice water thrown in my face. "Louise, we've decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." Elliot Jerome sat behind his mahogany desk, his expensive suit immaculate, his expression cold and detached. The same man who had cornered me by the copy machine just 2 days ago, standing close enough that I could smell his cologne, whispering about how dedicated employees sometimes get special recognition. The same man whose hand had lingered too long on my shoulder during yesterday's meeting, his fingers tracing patterns that made my skin crawl. I stared at him, my mind reeling. "I don't understand. My performance reviews have been excellent. The Henderson account I closed last month brought in over $200,000. His smile was thin, practiced. "This is a restructuring decision. We're eliminating redundancies in the sales department." Redundancies, the word tasted bitter. I'd been the top performer in our division for 18 months straight. I'd single-handedly saved 3 major client relationships that his incompetence had nearly destroyed. And now, less than 24 hours after I'd filed a formal complaint with HR about his inappropriate behavior, I was suddenly redundant. "This is retaliation," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I filed a complaint yesterday about what?" His eyes narrowed, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Fear. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Louise. This decision was made weeks ago." The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly, I almost believed it myself. Almost. "The severance package is quite generous," he continued, sliding a manila folder across the desk. 2 weeks' pay, plus we'll provide a positive reference for your job search." I opened the folder, scanning the termination letter. Everything was dated today, but the formatting looked rushed, hastily prepared. This wasn't a decision made weeks ago, this was panic. "I'll need you to clean out your desk and return your building access card before you leave today," he said, already looking down at other papers, dismissing me like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. My hands trembled slightly as I closed the folder. 3 years of my life, 3 years of staying late, covering for his mistakes, making excuses for his behavior to clients and colleagues. 3 years of building relationships, growing accounts, proving myself in a male-dominated industry, gone in 5 minutes. "Fine," I said, standing slowly. "I'll get my things." As I walked toward the door, he called after me. "Louise," I turned back. "I trust you'll be professional about this transition. No need to upset the other employees with unnecessary drama." The threat was subtle but clear. "Keep your mouth shut, or things could get worse for you." I nodded once, not trusting my voice, and stepped out of his office. The familiar hum of the open floor plan felt surreal now. My colleagues were hunched over their computers, making calls, living their normal Tuesday morning while my world had just imploded. The walk to my desk felt like a funeral march. Every step echoed in my ears. I could feel eyes on me, curious glances from coworkers who probably wondered why I was carrying a cardboard box at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. I sat down heavily in my ergonomic chair, the one I'd specifically requested after spending countless hours working late on Elliot's behalf. My hands moved automatically, pulling personal items from drawers. The small succulent plant my sister had given me for my birthday. The photo of my parents at their anniversary dinner. The coffee mug that read "World's Most Caffeinated Employee," a gag gift from the team last Christmas. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. "Louise?" I looked up to see Brianna Alvin from accounting standing beside my desk. Her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously toward Elliot's office. I heard, she said quietly. I'm so sorry. I forced a smile. It's fine. Just business, right? She glanced around again, then leaned closer. Can I help you carry anything to your car? I was about to decline when something in her expression stopped me. There was urgency there, fear mixed with determination. Actually, yes, thank you. We worked in silence, packing the last of my belongings. The office felt oppressive now, like the walls were closing in. I could see Elliot through his glass door, on the phone, gesturing animatedly, probably already working on damage control, spinning the narrative to make my departure seem routine. As we walked toward the elevator, our footsteps muffled by the corporate carpeting, Brianna stayed close beside me. Other employees offered awkward smiles and half-hearted waves. Some looked genuinely sorry to see me go. Others seemed relieved, one less person to compete with for promotions and bonuses. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped inside. As soon as they closed, sealing us in the small space, Brianna grabbed my arm. Louise, listen to me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Be careful, this isn't over. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? She glanced up at the floor indicator, watching the numbers count down. You're not the first woman to file a complaint against him, and you're not the first to get fired right after. The elevator dinged softly as we reached the ground floor. I can't say more here, she continued, her grip tightening on my arm. But if you really want to know what's going on, you need to find a way into his office when he's not there. He locks it every night, but, she paused, pressing something small and metallic into my palm. Sometimes people forget to return their building maintenance cards. The doors opened, and she stepped back, her expression neutral again. Good luck with your job search, Louise. I hope you find what you're looking for. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the keycard in my hand, before following her into the lobby. The security guard barely looked up as I handed over my official building access card, sliding Brianna's maintenance card into my back pocket. As I pushed through the revolving door and stepped onto the busy downtown sidewalk, one thought echoed in my mind. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a familiar contact. Detective Colleen Roman had been my best friend since college, and she'd been telling me for months that Elliot's behavior constituted workplace harassment. I'd been too afraid to listen, too worried about my career. Not anymore. Ika's phone rang twice before she answered.
Elise?
Shouldn't you be at work?
Colleen!
I said, my voice steadier than I'd felt all morning. I need your help, and I think you're going to want to hear this story. I stood on the sidewalk outside Meridian Financial, watching the familiar glass tower that had been my second home for 3 years. The autumn wind whipped through downtown, carrying the scent of coffee and exhaust fumes, but I barely noticed. My mind was spinning, processing what had just happened, and what Brianna had whispered to me in the elevator. Louise? Talk to me. What's going on? Colleen's voice through the phone was calm, professional, the same tone she used when interviewing witnesses. It grounded me, reminded me that I wasn't alone in this. He fired me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. 24 hours after I filed the HR complaint, he fired me. Silence on the other end. Then, a sharp intake of breath. That bastard. Louise? This is textbook retaliation. You have grounds for a lawsuit. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the maintenance keycard in my pocket. It's more than that, Colleen. I think there are other women, other complaints that somehow disappeared. What makes you say that? I told her about Brianna's warning, about the keycard, about the fear I'd seen in her eyes. As I spoke, I noticed something else, the way other employees had looked at me as I packed my things, not just sympathy, but recognition, like they'd seen this before. Louise, Colleen said when I finished, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Don't do anything rash, don't go back to that building tonight. Let me handle this through proper channels. But even as she spoke, I could hear the frustration in her voice. We both knew how these things went. Corporate lawyers, NDAs, settlements that buried the truth. By the time the proper channels processed anything, Elliot would have had months to cover his tracks. I hear you, I said, which wasn't the same as agreeing. Louise, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I have to go. I need to think. I hung up before she could argue further, and began walking aimlessly through the city streets. The lunch crowd was emerging from office buildings, a river of suits and determined faces. I used to be one of them, checking my phone for urgent emails, grabbing a quick sandwich before rushing back to my desk. Now I was nobody, unemployed, blacklisted, probably, if Elliot had any influence in the industry. But as I walked, something else began to simmer beneath the shock and hurt. Anger, not the hot, explosive kind that makes you do stupid things, but the cold, calculating anger that sharpens your focus and clarifies your purpose. I thought about the other women Brianna had mentioned. How many had there been? How many had filed complaints only to find themselves suddenly redundant, or not the right fit, or any of the other corporate euphemisms for shut up and go away? My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. Hey, how's work? Still dealing with that creepy boss? I stared at the message for a long moment. Even my family knew about Elliot's behavior. I'd been venting to my sister for months about his inappropriate comments, his boundary violations, his general creepiness, but I'd always followed up with excuses. It's not that bad. He's just old-fashioned. I can handle it. I typed back. Long story. We'll call you later. Another buzz. This time from my mother. Lunch tomorrow. I want to hear about your promotion prospects. The irony was bitter. My mother had been so proud when I got the job at Meridian Financial. Her daughter climbing the corporate ladder, breaking barriers in a male-dominated field. What would I tell her now? I found myself in Riverside Park, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. The afternoon sun was warm despite the autumn chill, and I watched joggers and dog walkers go about their normal lives. Everything felt surreal, like I was viewing the world through glass. My phone rang. Colleen again. I've been thinking, she said without preamble, about what you told me. Louise, I've handled enough sexual harassment cases to know the patterns. If there are other women, other complaints that got buried, there's going to be a paper trail. What kind of paper trail? Settlement agreements, NDAs, payoffs. These things don't just disappear, they get filed away somewhere, and if your boss is paranoid enough to fire you immediately after you filed a complaint, he's paranoid enough to keep records. I thought about Elliot's locked office, about the way he guarded his privacy, about the keycard burning a hole in my pocket. Colleen, hypothetically, if someone had access to his office. No, her voice was sharp. Louise, I know what you're thinking, and it's a bad idea. Breaking and entering, even with a keycard, is still a crime. Anything you found would be inadmissible in court, and you'd be facing charges. But if someone happened to find evidence of criminal activity, it would still be fruit of the poisonous tree. Louise, promise me you won't do anything stupid. I was quiet for a moment, watching a couple walk by hand in hand. I promise I won't do anything stupid. It wasn't technically a lie. What I was considering wasn't stupid, it was calculated. Risky, yes, but not stupid. Good. Look, I'm going to make some calls. I know people in corporate law, people who specialize in workplace harassment cases. We'll find a way to get to the truth legally. After we hung up, I sat in the park for another hour, thinking. Colleen was right about the legal risks, but she was also right about the patterns. Men like Elliot didn't just harass one woman. They were serial predators who relied on institutional power to protect them. As the sun began to set, I made my decision. I would go home, have a glass of wine, and think through everything that had happened. I would not drive back to Meridian Financial. I would not use the keycard in my pocket. I would not sneak into Elliot's office to look for evidence. I would be smart about this. But as I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the image of Brianna's frightened face, or the way she'd whispered, "Be careful," like she was trying to save my life. Whatever was in that locked office, it was something worth destroying careers over. And if there were other women who had been silenced, paid off, or threatened into compliance, they deserved better than watching their predator continue his pattern unchallenged. I drove home slowly, my mind already working through the logistics, building security, camera locations, the best time to avoid detection, not because I was planning anything, I told myself, just because I was thorough by nature. Just because I wanted to be prepared, my apartment felt smaller than usual when I walked through the door that evening. The familiar space, my sanctuary after long days dealing with Elliot's demands, now seemed hollow, like a stage set after the play has ended. I dropped my cardboard box of personal items on the kitchen counter and stared at the contents. 3 years of my professional life, reduced to a succulent plant and a coffee mug. I poured myself a generous glass of wine and sank into my couch, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a deep, bone-aching exhaustion. Not physical tiredness, but the kind of emotional drain that comes from having your reality suddenly shifted beneath your feet. My phone buzzed constantly. Word was already spreading through my professional network. Former colleagues from other companies, college friends, even my old boss from my first job out of university. The messages were all variations of the same theme. I heard about Meridian Financial. Let me know if you need anything. I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to craft responses, to put on a brave face and pretend this was just another career transition. Because it wasn't. This was character assassination, disguised as corporate restructuring. The wine helped dull the sharp edges of my anger, but it couldn't touch the deeper questions that kept circling through my mind. How many other women had sat in their apartments exactly like this, processing the same betrayal? How many had filed complaints, only to find themselves suddenly unemployed and blacklisted? I thought about the past 3 years, replaying interactions with Elliot through a different lens. The way he'd hired me, I'd been the most qualified candidate, but now I wondered if there had been other factors. The way he'd kept me working late, often when the office was nearly empty. The comments about my appearance, my clothes, my personal life, that I'd dismissed as inappropriate but harmless. Nothing was harmless with men like Elliot Jerome. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, and almost without thinking, I started researching. LinkedIn profiles of former Meridian Financial employees. Company reviews on Glassdoor. Any trace of other women who might have had similar experiences. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in a darkroom. Women who joined the company and left within a year. Vague Glassdoor reviews that mentioned inappropriate workplace culture and management issues. LinkedIn profiles that showed talented women suddenly switching industries or relocating to different cities. I found Sarah Chen, who'd been in marketing before I started. Her LinkedIn showed a 6-month gap in employment after leaving Meridian Financial. Now she worked for a nonprofit in Seattle, a dramatic career change for someone who'd been climbing the corporate ladder. Then there was Jessica Martinez, who'd lasted 8 months in the client relations department. Her LinkedIn showed a pattern of short-term contract work after leaving Meridian Financial. The kind of career trajectory that suggested someone who'd been effectively blacklisted from permanent positions. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. Elliot wasn't just a creepy boss, he was a predator who'd perfected his system. Hire talented women, harass them, then either silence them with money or destroy their careers if they fought back. I closed the laptop and refilled my wine glass, my hands shaking slightly. The apartment felt suffocating now, filled with the weight of what I'd discovered. I needed air, space to think. I walked onto my balcony, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Elliot was probably at home, relaxing after successfully eliminating another threat to his kingdom. Maybe he was having dinner with his wife, playing the role of the successful executive. Maybe he was already planning his next move, his next victim. The key card in my pocket felt like it was burning against my skin. My phone rang. "Colleen, how are you holding up?" "I've been better," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've been doing some research." "Louise, there are other women, Colleen. I found at least 5 who worked at Meridian Financial and left under suspicious circumstances. Short tenures, weird career gaps, sudden industry changes. Silence on the other end. Then that's concerning, but it's not evidence. It's a pattern that might suggest something, but it's not proof. What would constitute proof? Documentation, settlement agreements, recorded conversations. Something concrete that shows a pattern of harassment and retaliation. I thought about the locked office, about Brianna's warning, about the fear in her eyes. What if that documentation exists? What if he's keeping records? Louise, we've been over this. Even if such records exist, illegally obtaining them would make them inadmissible in court. I know. I paused, watching a plane blink its way across the night sky. But what if someone found evidence of ongoing criminal activity? What if this isn't just about past harassment, but about current threats or intimidation? Then that person would need to contact law enforcement through proper channels and let professionals handle it. Right, proper channels. I took a sip of wine, tasting the bitter irony. Like the proper channels I used yesterday when I filed a complaint with HR. Louise, I know you're frustrated. I'm not frustrated, Colleen. I'm calculating. The words came out colder than I intended. I spent 3 years watching this man operate. I know how he thinks, how he works. He's not just going to stop because I filed a complaint. He's going to find his next victim. So what are you suggesting? I didn't answer immediately. Below me the city hummed with late-night activity. People living their lives, pursuing their dreams, building their careers. Some of them were probably women just like me, talented and ambitious, who thought they could handle whatever challenges came their way. They deserved better than what I'd gotten. They deserved better than what Sarah Chen and Jessica Martinez had gotten. I'm suggesting that sometimes the proper channels aren't enough, I finally said. Sometimes you have to be willing to take risks to protect other people. Louise, I should go. I need to think. I hung up before she could argue further, and stood on the balcony for a long time, weighing my options. I could follow Colleen's advice, file a lawsuit, and hope that a corporate legal team would somehow be more effective than HR had been. I could quietly look for another job, and pretend this had never happened. Or I could use the keycard in my pocket to find out what Elliot Jerome was really hiding in that locked office. The choice, when it came down to it, wasn't really a choice at all. I woke up the next morning with a clarity that surprised me. The wine-induced haze had lifted, leaving behind a sharp focus I hadn't felt in months. I made coffee, showered, and dressed as if I were going to work, not because I had anywhere to be, but because routine felt like armor against the chaos of my new reality. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Colleen, 12 text messages, and a voicemail that started with Louise. If you're planning what I think you're planning, I deleted it without listening to the rest. As I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and staring at the maintenance keycard beside my laptop, the full scope of my situation crystallized. I wasn't just another disgruntled employee. I was someone who understood Elliot's patterns, his psychology, his weaknesses. I had access to his domain when he thought he was safe, and I had a detective for a best friend, even if she didn't approve of my methods. I was uniquely positioned to expose him. The realization should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like discovering a superpower I'd never known I possessed. I opened my laptop and began planning with the same methodical approach I'd used for sales presentations. First, I needed to understand the building's security system. Meridian Financial occupied floors 12 through 18 of the Harrison Tower. The maintenance keycard would get me into the building, but I needed to know about cameras, security guards, cleaning schedules. I called Harrison Tower's management office, using my most professional voice. Hi, this is Louise Garland from Meridian Financial. I'm organizing a surprise birthday party for one of our executives, and I need to coordinate with your cleaning staff to make sure we don't interfere with their schedule. The receptionist was helpful, explaining that the cleaning crews worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., floor by floor. Security made rounds every 2 hours, and the camera system focused primarily on the lobby and stairwells, not the individual office floors. The cleaning staff has master keys, but they're not supposed to enter private offices that are locked, she added. Too many executives keep confidential documents on their desks. Perfect. Elliot's paranoia about his locked office was actually going to work in my favor. Next, I researched the legal implications. Colleen was right about the evidence being inadmissible in court if obtained illegally. But she was also right about something else. If I found evidence of ongoing criminal activity, that changed everything. I spent the afternoon at the public library, researching corporate law, harassment statutes, and whistleblower protections. The more I read, the more I understood that Elliot's system wasn't just morally reprehensible, it was likely criminal. Extortion, intimidation, possibly even blackmail if he'd threatened women's careers to keep them quiet. By evening, I had a plan. Not just for getting into his office, but for what to do with whatever I found there. I called Colleen one more time.
Thank God,
She said, when she answered. Louise, I've been worried sick. Tell me you haven't done anything stupid.
I haven't.
But I need you to listen to me without interrupting. Louise, please, just listen. I told her about my research, about the other women, about the patterns I'd identified. I explained my theory about the documentation, about the likelihood that Elliot was keeping records of his illegal activities. If I'm right, I said, and if I can find evidence of ongoing criminal behavior, that's not just inadmissible evidence, that's a whistleblower situation. That's reporting a crime in progress, silence on the other end. Then what kind of ongoing criminal behavior, extortion, intimidation, threats? Think about it, Colleen. If he's been doing this for years, he's not just relying on NDAs. He's probably threatening women, maybe even following through on those threats. That's not just harassment, that's criminal intimidation. Louise, you're speculating. You don't know. I know enough. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I know that Brianna Alvin was terrified when she warned me. I know that she risked her job to give me that keycard. I know that she said I wasn't the first woman to get fired after filing a complaint. That's still not evidence of criminal activity. No, but it's evidence that someone inside the company believes there's something worth exposing, something worth taking risks for. Another long pause. Louise, even if you're right, even if you find evidence of criminal activity, you could still be charged with breaking and entering. And anything you find might be ruled inadmissible because of how you obtained it. But if I report it to the police as a concerned citizen who discovered evidence of ongoing crimes, it would depend on the specific circumstances and the quality of the evidence. I could hear her thinking, could almost see her working through the legal implications. Colleen was a good detective precisely because she understood the gray areas, the spaces between strict legal procedure and practical justice. Louise, I can't officially encourage you to do this, but if you were to hypothetically discover evidence of criminal activity, and if you were to immediately report it to law enforcement, and if that evidence suggested ongoing threats to other potential victims, hypothetically, that might change the legal calculus. Especially if you could demonstrate that you had reasonable cause to believe crimes were being committed, and that immediate action was necessary to prevent harm to others. I smiled for the first time in days. That's all I needed to know. Louise, wait, if you're really going to do this, you need to be smart about it. Document everything. Timestamps, photographs, detailed notes, and if you find anything at all, you call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. I understand, and Louise, be careful. If you're right about this man, if he's as dangerous as you think, he won't hesitate to escalate if he feels cornered. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment as darkness fell outside. The keycard lay on my coffee table, innocuous and small, but it felt like holding lightning in my palm. I wasn't just a fired employee anymore. I was a woman with a mission, a plan, and most importantly, a way inside. Tonight, I would discover what Elliot Garome was really hiding in that locked office. And tomorrow, his world would begin to crumble. The Harrison Tower looked different at night. During the day, it was a bustling monument to corporate success, filled with the energy of ambitious professionals climbing their respective ladders. At 11 p.m., it was a hollow shell of glass and steel, most of its windows dark, security lighting casting long shadows across the marble lobby. I sat in my car across the street, watching the building's rhythm. The security guard made his rounds every 2 hours, just as the management office had confirmed. At 10:30, I'd seen him disappear into the elevator, heading up to check the upper floors. He'd returned to his desk in the lobby 20 minutes later. I had a 40-minute window before his next round. My phone buzzed. A text from Colleen, "Are you sure about this?" I typed back, "Too late to stop me now." Be smart. Be safe. Call me the moment you're out. I slipped the phone into my pocket and checked my supplies one more time. Small flashlight, latex gloves, my phone with its camera ready, and a small notebook for detailed documentation. I dressed in dark clothing, not because I was planning to sneak around, but because I wanted to blend into the shadows if anyone saw me. The maintenance keycard felt warm in my palm as I crossed the street. The lobby was dimly lit, the security guard's desk positioned to overlook the main entrance. I could see him through the windows, reading a newspaper, his attention focused on something other than the side entrance that maintenance staff used. I walked confidently to the service door, swiped the keycard, and heard the soft click of the electronic lock disengaging. The door opened smoothly, and I stepped into the building's service corridor. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I wasn't breaking and entering, I was investigating potential criminal activity with legitimate access. The distinction mattered, both legally and psychologically. The service elevator was older than the main passenger elevators, its walls covered in protective padding. I pressed the button for the 14th floor, where Elliot's office was located, and watched the numbers climb. When the doors opened, I stepped into a corridor I knew well, but it felt alien in the darkness. Emergency lighting cast everything in a green glow, and the familiar corporate carpeting muffled my footsteps. I moved quickly but quietly toward the main office area. The cleaning crew was on a different floor. I could hear the distant hum of vacuum cleaners somewhere below. They wouldn't reach the 14th floor for at least another hour, giving me plenty of time to work. Elliot's office was at the far end of the floor, behind frosted glass walls that bore his name in elegant lettering. During the day, those walls had always seemed like a symbol of success and authority. Now they looked like what they really were, a barrier designed to hide what happened inside. I approached the door, noting the high-end electronic lock that had replaced the standard office hardware. This wasn't just about keeping employees out during the day, this was about keeping secrets safe. But Elliot had made one crucial mistake. The same keycard that got me into the building also opened his office door. Maintenance staff, after all, needed access to every room for cleaning and repairs. The lock clicked open, and I stepped into Elliot's domain. The office was larger than I'd remembered, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Elliot's desk dominated the space, flanked by expensive leather chairs, and a conference table that had probably cost more than most people's cars. Everything was immaculate, arranged with the precision of someone who needed to control every detail of his environment. I pulled on the latex gloves and began my search systematically. The desk drawers were locked, but I'd expected that. The filing cabinets were similarly secured. But I wasn't looking for obvious hiding places. I was looking for the kinds of spots a paranoid man might use for his most sensitive documents. Behind the desk, I found what I was looking for: a small wall safe, partially hidden behind a framed diploma. The safe was high-end, digital, and definitely not standard office equipment. This was personal security, the kind you install when you have secrets worth protecting. I photographed the safe from multiple angles, documenting its location and model number. Getting into it would require professional help, but knowing it existed was the first piece of evidence that Elliot was hiding something significant. I continued searching, looking for anything that might give me insight into his system. In the conference table's built-in storage compartment, I found a small filing folder marked Personnel, Confidential. It wasn't locked, just tucked away where casual visitors wouldn't find it. Inside were copies of HR complaints dating back 5 years. Not just my complaint, but dozens of others. Sarah Chen's name was there, along with Jessica Martinez and women I'd never heard of. Each complaint was accompanied by handwritten notes in Elliot's precise script: resolved, reference letter provided, transferred to Seattle office, terminated, performance issues. My hands shook as I photographed each document. This was it, proof of a systematic pattern of harassment and retaliation. But as I read deeper, I realized this was just the tip of the iceberg. The real evidence was in that safe. And tomorrow, I would find a way to open it. I drove home with my mind racing, the photographed documents burning in my phone's memory like digital evidence of a crime that had been hiding in plain sight. The HR complaints were damning enough, but Elliot's handwritten notes revealed the true scope of his operation. This wasn't just harassment, it was a calculated system of predation and cover-up. Back in my apartment, I transferred the photos to my laptop and began analyzing them properly. The pattern was even worse than I'd imagined. 17 women over 5 years. Each complaint followed the same trajectory: initial harassment, formal complaint, immediate retaliation, and finally, silence through either termination or transfer. But the most chilling part was Elliot's notes in the margins. Next to Sarah Chen's complaint, he'd written discussed alternatives with R. Martinez, agreed to Seattle transfer plus compensation package. Next to Jessica Martinez's file, persistent required additional persuasion. See private files. Private files. The safe. I picked up my phone and called Colleen. It was nearly 1 a.m., but she answered on the second ring. Please tell me you're calling from your apartment. I'm home, and Colleen, I found something. I sent her the photographs and waited as she reviewed them. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Jesus Christ, Louise. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. This is a smoking gun. 17 women, systematic retaliation, and evidence of some kind of additional coercion. This isn't just harassment, this is criminal conspiracy. There's more. He has a wall safe in his office, and his notes reference private files for the women who didn't quietly disappear. I think that's where he keeps the real evidence. Louise, you cannot go back there. Not alone. What you've found is enough to launch a formal investigation. We can get warrants, subpoenas. How long will that take? Weeks? Months? And what happens to the women who are working there now while we wait for the legal system to catch up? Louise, there's a new hire in the marketing department. Henrietta something. She started last month. She's young, ambitious, probably exactly the type he targets. How long before she becomes complaint number 18? The line went quiet. I could hear Colleen thinking, weighing her oath as a police officer against her friendship with me. What do you need? She finally asked. I need to get into that safe. And I need someone who knows what they're looking for when we find whatever's inside.
Colleen. I can't do this alone. I need someone who understands evidence procedures, who knows how to document everything properly so it will hold up in court. Someone who can make sure this doesn't get buried in legal technicalities. Another long pause. Louise, I could lose my job. My career. Everything I've worked for. And if we do nothing, he'll keep destroying lives. How many more women have to suffer because we followed proper procedure? I heard her exhale slowly. I have a contact. Someone who specializes in corporate security, very discreet. He could get us into the safe without damaging anything inside. Someone you trust? Kirk Alvin. He's Brianna's older brother, actually. Former military, now runs a private security consulting firm. He's helped us with a few cases where we needed specialized access. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same woman who'd warned me about Elliot had a brother who could help expose him. Can you reach out to him? I'll make some calls. But Louise, if we do this, we do it right. Professional documentation, proper chain of custody for any evidence we find. This needs to be bulletproof. Understood. And if we find what I think we're going to find, we go straight to the FBI. This kind of systematic harassment and intimidation crosses state lines. If he's been transferring women to different offices, that makes it federal. Federal. The word carried weight I hadn't considered. This wasn't just about one company in one city. If Elliot had been operating across state lines, the scope of his crimes could be massive. There's something else, I said. The way he reacted when I filed the complaint. He was scared, but not surprised. Like he had a protocol for dealing with this exact situation. What do you mean? He knew about you. About the fact that I have a detective friend. When he fired me, he said something about not wanting unnecessary drama. But his reaction was too quick, too prepared.
I think he researches the women he targets, looks for vulnerabilities or connections that might pose a threat. You think he's been investigating his own employees. I think he's been protecting himself by gathering intelligence on potential threats. Which means there might be files on all of us, not just the women who complained, but anyone who might have supported them. The implications were staggering. If Elliot had been conducting background investigations on his own employees, looking for leverage or weaknesses, the scope of his criminal behavior extended far beyond harassment. Louise, this is bigger than we thought. If he's been conducting unauthorized investigations, collecting personal information, using it to intimidate or coerce employees, then we need to get into that safe before he has a chance to destroy the evidence. I'll call Kirk tonight. Can you meet us tomorrow evening? Where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can plan this properly. I looked out my apartment window at the city lights, imagining all the women out there who were going to work tomorrow, trusting that their employers would protect them, believing that filing a complaint would lead to justice rather than retaliation. Yes, I said. Let's end this. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing insistently. 7 missed calls from an unknown number, 3 voicemails, and a string of text messages that made my blood run cold. Louise, this is Elliot. We need to talk. I know what you did last night. Security footage doesn't lie. Call me back. Now. My hands trembled as I listened to the voicemails. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the rage simmering beneath the surface. Louise, I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding. You got your severance package, a clean reference. But apparently that wasn't enough for you. A pause. I'm at the office now, reviewing some interesting security footage from last night. I think you'll want to see it. My office, 10 a.m. Don't make me come find you. I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. Security footage. I'd been so careful, so methodical, but buildings like Harrison Tower had cameras everywhere, and I'd been naive to think I could move through them undetected. My phone rang. The unknown number again. Hello, Louise. Elliot's voice was silk over steel. I trust you got my messages. I don't know what you're talking about. He laughed, a sound without humor. Don't insult my intelligence. Building security tracked a maintenance keycard, accessing the 14th floor at 11:47 p.m. last night. The same keycard that was reported missing from Brianna Alvin's desk yesterday morning. My stomach dropped. Brianna, she'd risked everything to help me, and now she was going to pay the price. You're going to come in this morning, he continued. We're going to have a conversation about your future prospects, your career in this industry, and what happens to people who don't understand boundaries. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a choice. You can come in voluntarily, we can discuss this like adults, and maybe we can find a way to resolve this misunderstanding. Or I can call the police, report a break-in, and let them sort it out. Your friend Detective Roman might find that professionally embarrassing. The threat was clear. He'd done his homework, knew about my connection to Colleen, and was prepared to use it against both of us. I'll be there, I said. Good, and Louise, come alone. No recording devices, no backup plans, just you and me, settling this once and for all. I hung up and immediately called Colleen. He knows, I said before she could speak. He has security footage, and he's threatening to have me arrested for breaking and entering. Shit, Louise. Don't go to that meeting. If he has evidence of you in his office illegally, he's threatening you too. He knows about our friendship, knows you're a cop, he's using that as leverage. Silence on the other end. Then that bastard. Louise. This changes everything. If he's willing to threaten a police officer, he's more dangerous than we thought. I have to go to the meeting. If I don't, he'll have me arrested, and everything we've found will be tainted by the criminal charges. Louis? No, this is exactly what he wants to get you alone, to intimidate you into backing down. Then we make sure I'm not really alone. I explained my plan as I got dressed, choosing my outfit carefully. Professional but not submissive, confident but not confrontational. I needed to look like someone who could be reasoned with, not someone who posed a threat. At 9:45 a.m., I stood outside the Harrison Tower, My phone connected to Colleen's on an open line, the device hidden in my purse. She was parked 2 blocks away, close enough to respond if things went wrong. Remember, her voice crackled through my hidden earpiece, don't admit to anything. Let him talk. The more he reveals about his methods, the more evidence we have. I took the elevator to the 14th floor, my heart pounding but my mind clear. This was it. The final confrontation. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd risked, came down to the next hour. Elliot was waiting in his office, seated behind his desk like a king holding court. He looked older than I remembered, stress lines around his eyes, but his smile was as predatory as ever. "Louise, thank you for coming. Please, sit." I remained standing. "Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want?" Straight to the point. "I appreciate that." He opened a folder on his desk. "I want to understand why you thought breaking into my office was a good idea. I want to understand why you keep files on women who file harassment complaints against you." His smile faltered for just a moment. "I keep files on all personnel issues. It's standard corporate practice, including handwritten notes about providing additional persuasions to employees who don't quietly disappear." The silence stretched between us. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like a predator evaluating prey. "You read my private files. I read evidence of systematic harassment and retaliation. Evidence obtained through criminal trespass. Evidence that would never see the inside of a courtroom. We'll see about that." He stood up, walking around the desk to stand close to me. Too close. The same intimidation tactic he'd used countless times before. "Louise, you're a smart woman. Smart enough to know that this ends badly for you, if you don't make the right choice." "What choice is that?" "You apologize for your misguided investigation. You sign a more comprehensive settlement agreement. And you disappear quietly, just like the others. Or," his smile returned cold and certain, "or you find out what happens to women who don't know when to stop." The threat hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Elliot stood close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne, the same scent that had made my skin crawl during all those late-night strategy sessions over the past 3 years. "What exactly are you saying, Elliot?" I kept my voice steady, knowing Colleen was listening through the open line. "I'm saying that some women understand the game, and some don't. The ones who don't, well, they tend to have accidents. Career accidents. Personal accidents. Life has a way of becoming very difficult for people who don't know their place." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you." He moved even closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you know what happened to Sarah Chen after she moved to Seattle? She had a wonderful job lined up at a tech startup. Very promising. Until someone made a few phone calls about her instability and professional misconduct. She's working retail now, Louise." "Retail, after a master's degree from MIT. The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach turn. But I could hear the confession in his words, the admission that he'd actively destroyed women's careers. "And Jessica Martinez?" I asked. Jessica was stubborn. She tried to find another job in the industry, kept pushing back against the narrative. It took 6 months, but eventually she got the message. "Did you know she moved back in with her parents? 32 years old, living in her childhood bedroom, because nobody would hire her. You destroyed their lives. I protected my company. I protected the natural order of things." He returned to his desk, pulling out a thick file. "Which brings us to you, Louise. You have a choice to make." He opened the file, revealing photographs. Pictures of me entering the building last night, accessing his office, sitting at my computer at home. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He'd been watching me, following me, documenting my every move. "You've been stalking me. I've been monitoring a potential threat. Standard security protocol." He flipped through the photos casually. "Did you know your friend Detective Roman has been having an affair with her partner? Married partner, I should say. Be a shame if internal affairs found out about that." My hands clenched into fists. "You're insane." I'm thorough. I know about your sister's DUI from last year that she somehow got reduced to a parking ticket. I know about your mother's gambling problem that she thinks nobody knows about. I know about your college roommate's tax issues, your ex-boyfriend's drug problem, your cousin's immigration status. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. He hadn't just been watching me, he'd been building a comprehensive profile of everyone I cared about, looking for leverage, for pressure points. How? Money, Louise. Money and connections. When you have enough of both, you can learn anything about anyone. You can ruin anyone's life with a few phone calls. He closed the file and leaned back in his chair. Now let's discuss your future. You're going to sign a settlement agreement that includes a comprehensive non-disclosure clause. You're going to disappear quietly, just like the others. And in exchange, your friends and family get to keep their comfortable little lives. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning Detective Roman gets suspended pending investigation. Your sister gets arrested for her DUI that somehow gets discovered by traffic enforcement. Your mother's gambling debts get called in by some very unpleasant people. And that's just the beginning. The scope of his threat was breathtaking. He wasn't just threatening me, he was threatening to destroy everyone I loved. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. And business is about understanding leverage. He pulled out a contract from his desk drawer. This is a comprehensive settlement agreement, $200,000 in exchange for your silence. Forever. I stared at the document, my mind racing. Through my earpiece, I could hear Colleen's breathing, steady and controlled. She was listening to everything, recording everything. I need time to think about this. You have until tomorrow morning. Sign the agreement, and this all goes away. Refuse and I start making phone calls. Your choice, Louise.
I stood up, my legs shaking but my voice steady. I'll let you know, Louise. His voice stopped me at the door. Don't try to be clever. Don't think your detective friend can protect you. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never lost, not once. As I walked toward the elevator, I could feel his eyes on my back. The building felt different now, not just a place of business, but a hunting ground where a predator had been stalking his prey for years. In the elevator, I spoke quietly to my hidden phone. Did you get all that? Every word, Colleen's voice crackled through the earpiece. Louise, we're not waiting for Kirk. We're going to the FBI. Today, he'll know if I don't show up tomorrow morning. He'll know anyway. Men like that, they can smell fear. And right now, Louise, you need to be afraid. Not of him, but of what he'll do if we give him any more time. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the lobby. Tomorrow, Elliot Guillaume expected me to surrender. Instead, he was going to discover that his perfect system had one fatal flaw: he'd finally chosen the wrong victim. The FBI field office in downtown was a fortress of glass and concrete that somehow managed to look both bureaucratic and intimidating. I sat in the sterile waiting room, Colleen beside me, both of us clutching copies of the evidence we'd gathered. The recording of my meeting with Elliot played on repeat in my mind, each threat more chilling than the last. Special Agent Henrietta Garland will see you now, the receptionist announced. Agent Garland was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of Colleen. She listened to our story without interruption, occasionally taking notes, her expression growing darker with each revelation. Let me make sure I understand, she said when we finished. You're alleging that Elliot Guillaume has been systematically harassing female employees, retaliating against those who complain, and using private investigators to gather blackmail material on potential threats to his operation. That's correct, I said. And I have recordings of him admitting to destroying women's careers and threatening to do the same to my friends and family. She played back portions of the recording, pausing at key moments. When Elliot's voice described how he'd ruined Sarah Chen's career prospects, Agent Garland's jaw tightened visibly. This is interstate criminal activity, she said finally. If he's been interfering with employment opportunities across state lines, using intimidation and extortion to silence victims, we're looking at federal crimes, multiple felonies.
How long before you can act on this? Colleen asked. We'll need to move fast. If he suspects federal involvement, he'll destroy evidence. I'm going to get a warrant for his office, his computers and that wall safe you mentioned. We'll execute it first thing tomorrow morning. I felt a surge of relief, but Agent Garland's next words brought me back to reality. Miss Garland, I need you to understand the risks. If Guillaume realizes what's happening, he may accelerate his timeline for retaliation. You need to be prepared for him to follow through on his threats. What do you mean? I mean that men like this don't go quietly. When they feel cornered, they often lash out. You need to be vigilant, and you need to warn the people in your life who might be targets. We left the FBI office with a plan. Agent Garland would coordinate with the local police to ensure my safety, while also beginning the process of reaching out to other potential victims. The warrant would be executed at 6 a.m., before Elliot arrived at the office. But as we drove back to my apartment, my phone began buzzing with increasingly frantic messages. The first was from my sister, Louise. Someone called my work asking about a DUI from last year. My boss is asking questions, what's going on? Then my mother, honey, I got a strange call from someone claiming to be from the IRS. They said there were irregularities in my taxes. I'm scared. Finally, a message that made my blood run cold. From Brianna Alvin, Louise, I'm in the hospital. Someone broke into my apartment last night. I think it was about the key card. Be careful. He's already started, I said, showing Colleen the messages. He's not waiting until tomorrow morning. Colleen immediately called Agent Garland, while I tried to reach my sister. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. We're accelerating the timeline, Agent Garland said when Colleen put her on speaker. I'm getting an emergency warrant, we're going in tonight. But even as she spoke, I knew it might be too late. Elliot had 15 years of experience perfecting his system. He knew how to move fast, how to cover his tracks, how to make people disappear from the industry. My phone rang. Elliot's number. Answer it, Agent Garland instructed through the speaker. Keep him talking, we're tracing the call. I picked up with shaking hands. What do you want, Louise? His voice was calm, almost cheerful. I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding. I don't know what you mean. FBI agent Henrietta Garland, 34 years old, divorced, lives alone with a cat named Whiskers. Graduated from Georgetown Law before joining the Bureau. Should I continue? My heart stopped. He knew about our meeting. He knew about Agent Garland. How? I told you, Louise. I have connections. I have resources. And I have 15 years of experience dealing with women who don't know when to stop. You're finished, I said. Even if you know about the FBI, you can't stop what's coming. Can't I? His voice turned cold. Your sister Jessica just got fired from her job. Something about unreported legal issues. Your mother's about to lose her house. Seems her mortgage company just discovered some irregularities in her application from 10 years ago. Each word was like a knife. He was systematically destroying my family's lives while I listened helplessly. And poor Brianna Alvin, such a shame about her accident. Apparently she fell down the stairs in her apartment building. Clumsy girl. You bastard. I'm a businessman, Louise. And business is about sending clear messages. The message is simple, some fights you can't win. We'll see about that. Yes, we will. You have until midnight to sign that settlement agreement. After that, things get much worse for everyone you care about. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, rage and terror warring in my chest.
Louise. Agent Garland's voice came through Colleen's phone. We're moving now. Emergency warrant approved. But I need you somewhere safe until this is over. No, I said. I'm not hiding. I'm going to finish this. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in Queens, but it felt like a prison. Agent Garland had insisted on protection detail after Elliot's threats escalated, and now I sat on an uncomfortable couch watching two federal agents coordinate the raid on Meridian Financial through encrypted radios. Alpha team in position, crackled through the speaker, building secured.
No sign of the target. My stomach dropped. He's not there? Agent Garland frowned at her radio. Bravo team. Status on Jerome's residence? Negative. House is empty. Looks like he cleared out in a hurry. The reality hit me like a physical blow. While we'd been planning our careful legal approach, Elliot had been executing his escape plan. 15 years of criminal activity had taught him exactly how to disappear when the walls closed in. He's gone, I said, the words tasting like ash. He's destroying evidence and running. We'll find him, Agent Garland assured me. But Louise, this might actually work in our favor. Running makes him look guilty, and desperate men make mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the news. I turned on the television, flipping through news channels until I found what he wanted me to see. A breaking news banner scrolled across the screen, local detective under investigation for corruption. The anchor's voice was professionally neutral as she delivered the devastating news. Detective Colleen Roman of the Metropolitan Police Department has been suspended pending investigation into allegations of evidence, tampering and accepting bribes from criminal organizations. The investigation was prompted by an anonymous tip that included detailed documentation of Detective Roman's alleged misconduct. The room spun around me. This was Elliot's work, his final act of retaliation before disappearing. He was destroying Colleen's career, her reputation, everything she'd worked for. It's all fabricated, I said to Agent Garland. He's framing her. I know. But Louise, even fabricated evidence can destroy careers while we sort out the truth. He's playing a scorched earth strategy. My phone rang. Colleen's number. Louise, her voice was hollow, defeated. Did you see the news? I'm so sorry. This is my fault. No, it's not. It's his. But Louise, I'm radioactive now. I can't help you anymore. The FBI is distancing themselves from me until this gets sorted out. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer. He's good at this. Louise, the fake evidence he's created is sophisticated enough that it'll take time to debunk. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everyone I'd dragged into this nightmare. Brianna in the hospital, my family under attack, Colleen's career in ruins, all because I'd decided to fight back. There's something else, Colleen continued. The hospital called. Brianna's condition is worse than they initially thought. She's in a coma. The room went silent except for the hum of the radioed coordination. Another life destroyed by Elliot's machine. Agent Garland, one of the federal agents, called out. We've got a problem. Charlie team reports that the office safe is empty, completely cleaned out. What about his computers? Wiped, professional job. And there's something else. The building's security system shows multiple entries over the past week. Looks like he's been slowly moving evidence out of the building. He'd been planning this for days, maybe weeks. While I thought I was being clever, he'd been orchestrating his exit strategy. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Lobby of the Meridian building. Now come alone or your sister dies. I showed the message to Agent Garland. Her face went pale. We need to verify your sister's location immediately, she said, snapping orders to her team. 5 minutes later, the confirmation came through. Jessica Garland's apartment shows signs of forced entry. She's not there, and neighbors report seeing a van outside her building around 3 a.m. The final piece of Elliot's trap clicked into place. He hadn't just escaped, he'd taken hostages. Louise, you cannot go to that building, Agent Garland said. This is exactly what he wants. He's trying to draw you into a controlled environment where he has all the advantages. He has my sister, and if you go there, he'll have you too. Then he'll have 2 hostages, and all the leverage. But even as she spoke, I knew I didn't have a choice. The pattern was clear. Elliot escalated until his victims submitted or were destroyed. He'd proven he could reach anyone, anywhere. Running would only delay the inevitable. I'm going, I said, standing up. Louise, no, we can handle this professionally. We have protocols. Your protocols just got my best friend suspended and my sister kidnapped. I grabbed my jacket. I'm finishing this. Agent Garland stepped in front of me. I can't let you leave, then arrest me, but I'm not letting him destroy any more lives while we follow procedure. For a moment, we stared at each other. Then she stepped aside. Fine. But you're wearing a wire, you're taking backup, and you're following my instructions to the letter. Agreed. As the agents prepared their equipment, I stared out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Elliot was waiting with my sister, confident that he'd finally broken me. He was about to learn that some women don't break, they explode. The lobby of the Meridian building was eerily quiet at 9 p.m. The usual bustle of corporate life had given way to an oppressive silence, broken only by the soft hum of security lighting and the distant sounds of traffic outside. I stood near the elevator bank, my heart pounding so hard I was sure the wire taped to my chest would pick up nothing but the sound of my own terror. Louise, Elliot's voice came from behind me. I turned to see him emerge from the shadows, near the building's main entrance. He looked different, older, more desperate, but somehow more dangerous. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened, his shirt wrinkled. This wasn't the controlled corporate predator I'd known for 3 years. This was a cornered animal. "Where's my sister?" I demanded. "Safe. For now." He approached slowly, his hands visible, but his movements predatory. "Did you really think you could bring down 15 years of careful work with a recording and some stolen files? It seemed to work pretty well. You're here, aren't you? Running scared." His laugh was bitter. "Running? Louise, I'm not running. I'm relocating. There's a difference. What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Control, order." The natural hierarchy restored. He stopped a few feet away from me. "You've caused me considerable inconvenience, but nothing that can't be fixed. By kidnapping my sister, by motivating you to make better choices." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet, showing me a live video feed. My sister Jessica was tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, her eyes wide with terror, but very much alive. "She's unharmed," he said, "and she'll stay that way as long as you cooperate." Through my earpiece, I could hear Agent Garland's voice. "Keep him talking. We're triangulating the video signal." "What kind of cooperation?" I asked. "Simple. You're going to record a statement explaining that your allegations against me were fabricated. You're going to admit that you broke into my office, that you forged documents, that you conspired with your detective friend to frame an innocent man. Nobody will believe that."
They will when it's accompanied by your suicide note. His smile was cold, calculated. Guilt-ridden woman takes her own life after false accusations destroy an innocent man's career. Very tragic. Very believable. The scope of his plan hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't just trying to discredit me, he was planning to murder me and make it look like suicide. "You're insane. I'm thorough. Your death will accomplish several things. It discredits all evidence against me. It sends a clear message to other potential troublemakers, and it eliminates the one person who could testify against me. And my sister will have a terrible accident shortly after your funeral. Grief-stricken by your suicide, she'll tragically die in a car accident. Very sad. Very final." Agent Garland's voice crackled in my ear. "Signal traced. Federal teams are moving to the warehouse location now." But even as I heard the good news, I knew it might not be enough. Elliot had been planning this for weeks, and men like him always had backup plans. "You won't get away with this," I said. "Too many people know the truth." "Do they? Your detective friend is facing corruption charges. The FBI agent who believed your story is about to be transferred to a desk job in North Dakota. Funny how career-ending mistakes happen when you cross the wrong people. And the brave little accountant who helped you. Well, let's just say her hospital stay is going to be longer than expected." Each revelation was like a knife twist. He hadn't just been planning his escape, he'd been systematically destroying everyone who could support my story. "Brianna didn't do anything wrong. She gave you access to my building. She helped you commit a crime. In my book, that makes her an accomplice. She was trying to protect other women. She was trying to protect herself. But she chose the wrong side, Louise. Just like you did." My phone buzzed. A message from Agent Garland. "Warehouse is empty. Decoy location. Keep him talking." The blood drained from my face. The video feed was fake, or Jessica had been moved, or both. Elliot had been one step ahead of us from the beginning. "You see it now, don't you?" he said, watching my expression.
The realization that you never had control, that you were always just reacting to my moves. Where is she? Closer than you think. In fact, she's been here all along. He gestured toward the elevator. Shall we go visit her? Louise, don't go with him. Agent Garland's voice was urgent in my ear. We're 3 minutes out. Stall him. I need proof she's alive, I said. Of course you do. He tapped his tablet, and the video feed changed. Now I could see Jessica more clearly, and behind her, the unmistakable view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. She was somewhere in this building. Impressed? I've been using the executive conference room on the 20th floor as my temporary operations center. Your sister has been enjoying the view while we waited for you. You bastard. I'm a planner, Louise. While you were playing detective, I was preparing for every contingency. While you were trusting the system, I was buying the system. While you were hoping for justice, I was ensuring that justice would never find me. The elevator dinged softly behind us. Shall we go end this? He asked, gesturing toward the open doors. I knew it was a trap. I knew that stepping into that elevator would likely be the last decision I ever made. But somewhere 20 floors above us, my sister was waiting, and I was the only person who could save her. After you, I said. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like descending into hell, even though we were going up. Elliot stood beside me, calm and controlled, while my mind raced through every possible escape scenario. None of them ended well. You know, he said, conversationally, I actually respected you. Out of all the women I've dealt with over the years, you were the most persistent, most intelligent. Under different circumstances, we could have worked well together. Under different circumstances, you wouldn't be a sociopathic predator. Sociopathic? He seemed genuinely surprised. Louise, I'm a businessman. Everything I've done has been about maintaining order, preserving the natural hierarchy. Men lead, women follow. It's worked for thousands of years, by threatening and destroying lives, by providing structure, guidance. The women who understood that thrived. The ones who didn't, well, they learned eventually. The elevator dinged softly as we reached the 20th floor. The executive conference room was at the end of a long corridor, its glass walls normally offering a stunning view of the city. Tonight, they looked like the walls of a prison. Agent Garland, I whispered, hoping the wire was still transmitting. 20th floor, executive conference room. I know you're wearing a wire, Elliot said casually. I've known since you walked into the building. Don't worry, it won't work up here. This floor has signal jammers installed. Corporate espionage protection, you understand. My heart sank. If the wire wasn't working, if Agent Garland couldn't hear what was happening, then Jessica and I were truly on our own. We reached the conference room, and Elliot used his keycard to open the door. Inside, my sister sat tied to a chair, her eyes wide with terror, but very much alive. Relief flooded through me until I saw the man standing behind her, tall, muscular, with the cold eyes of someone who'd done this before. Louise, Jessica cried out when she saw me. I'm so sorry, I tried to run, but they were waiting. It's okay, I said, stepping toward her. It's going to be okay. Actually, it's not. Elliot said, closing the door behind us. Oliver, please search her for recording devices. The tall man moved toward me, with professional efficiency, and I realized he wasn't just hired muscle, he was skilled, trained, probably military or law enforcement background. Just like Elliot, to surround himself with competent people, even for his crimes. Wire taped to her chest. Oliver reported after a thorough search. Phone in her pocket, earpiece in her left ear. Remove them all. I stood still as Oliver stripped away my connections to the outside world. The wire, the earpiece, my phone, all of it went into a small metal box that he sealed and set aside. Now we can talk freely, Elliot said, settling into the chair at the head of the conference table. Oliver, please ensure our guests are comfortable. Oliver untied Jessica from the chair and moved her to sit beside me at the table. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, but she was unharmed. Louise, I want you to understand something, Elliot began. This isn't personal, this is business. You posed a threat to my operations, and threats must be eliminated. What operations?
You're the CFO of a financial services company, not some criminal mastermind.
I'm both. Meridian Financial is just the legitimate face of a much larger enterprise. Do you really think I made my fortune from corporate salary? He gestured around the luxurious conference room. This lifestyle, this power comes from understanding what people want and providing it for a price. You're a pimp. I'm a facilitator. Wealthy men have needs, and I connect them with women who can meet those needs. The women get financial security, the men get companionship, and I get a percentage of the arrangement. The scope of his operation was staggering. Not just harassment, but human trafficking disguised as corporate culture. The women at Meridian Financial, some of them, yes. The ones who were amenable to additional opportunities. The ones who understood that their careers could be enhanced through creative partnerships. And the ones who refused were transferred to other opportunities. Sometimes in other cities, sometimes in other industries. Market forces, you understand. Jessica spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. Louise, what is he talking about? He's talking about slavery, I said. My voice steady despite the rage building inside me. He's been trafficking women under the cover of corporate employment. Smart girl, Elliot said approvingly. I knew you'd figure it out eventually. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to destroy you. With what? Your wire isn't working. Your FBI friends can't find you. Your detective friend is facing corruption charges. Face it, Louise. You're alone. No, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. I'm not. I pulled out a small device that Oliver had missed during his search, a GPS tracker that Agent Garland had sewn into my jacket lining. But more importantly, I pulled out a second recording device, this one disguised as a pen. You missed one, I said, holding up the pen. And this one has been recording everything since I walked into the building. Elliot's composure cracked for the first time. Oliver is about to have company, I said, as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. The door burst open, and Agent Garland rushed in with a team of federal agents, weapons drawn. FBI, everyone on the ground. For a moment, the room was chaos. Oliver reached for a weapon, but found himself surrounded. Elliot stood frozen, his 15-year empire crumbling around him. Louise Garland, Agent Garland called out, "Are you and your sister unharmed?" "We're fine," I said, pulling Jessica into my arms. "And I have everything we need to put this bastard away forever." Elliot looked at me across the conference table, his face a mask of defeat and rage. "You think you've won," he said quietly. "You have no idea how deep this goes. How many people are involved? How many lives I can still destroy?" "Maybe," I said, as the federal agents placed him in handcuffs. "But you'll be doing it from prison." The media circus began at dawn. By 6 a.m., news vans lined the street outside the Meridian Financial Building, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like mechanical flowers reaching for the sun. I watched from Agent Garland's office window as reporters set up their equipment, preparing to broadcast the story that would dominate headlines for weeks. "Louise, you need to see this," Agent Garland said, turning up the volume on her office television. The anchor's voice was grave as she delivered the breaking news. Federal agents have arrested Elliot Garome, CFO of Meridian Financial, in connection with what authorities are calling one of the largest human trafficking operations ever uncovered in the corporate world. The arrest came after a months-long investigation, prompted by whistleblower Louise Garland, a former employee who risked everything to expose the truth. The screen showed footage of Elliot in handcuffs, his usual composure completely shattered. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the federal agents surrounding him, as they led him to the waiting vehicle. "The investigation has revealed a sophisticated network spanning multiple states," the anchor continued, "with evidence suggesting that Garome used his position at Meridian Financial to identify and recruit vulnerable women into what prosecutors are calling modern slavery disguised as corporate culture." My phone had been buzzing constantly since the arrest. Reporters, former colleagues, advocacy groups, everyone wanted to hear my story. But I wasn't ready for that yet. First, I needed to understand the full scope of what we'd uncovered. How many women? I asked Agent Garland. 43 confirmed victims across 6 states. But Louise, we're just getting started. The files we found in his personal safe contain evidence of a network involving at least a dozen other companies, all using similar methods. The number hit me like a physical blow. 43 women, whose lives had been destroyed or derailed by Elliot's system. 43 women, who had trusted their employer to protect them, only to find themselves trapped in a nightmare. What about the other companies? We're coordinating with field offices in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Miami. This is going to be a massive investigation, Louise. Your courage in speaking up has opened the door to taking down an entire network. On the television, the news coverage had shifted to interviews with legal experts discussing the charges. Wire fraud, racketeering, human trafficking, conspiracy. Mr. Jerome is facing potentially life in prison, one analyst explained. This case represents a new frontier in corporate crime prosecution. My sister Jessica appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted but determined. She'd been debriefed by federal agents for hours, providing testimony about her kidnapping and the threats against our family. Louise, there's someone here to see you, she said. Behind her stood a woman I didn't recognize, mid-30s, professional but nervous, clutching a manila folder against her chest. Miss Garland, I'm Sarah Chen. I worked at Meridian Financial 3 years ago. Sarah Chen. The woman whose career Elliot had destroyed, who'd been forced to move to Seattle and start over. She looked older than her years, carrying the weight of trauma that I was only beginning to understand. I saw the news, she continued. I wanted to thank you for doing what I couldn't. Sarah, you don't need to thank me. I should have acted sooner.
You acted when it mattered. She held out the folder. I kept everything. Every document, every email, every threat. I was too scared to use it, but maybe it can help with the case. Agent Garland took the folder, scanning its contents. This is incredibly valuable evidence. Miss Chen, would you be willing to testify? Yes. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can fight back. Over the next hour, more women arrived. Jessica Martinez, who'd been blacklisted from the industry, Brianna Alvin, released from the hospital but still recovering from her accident, and others I'd never met, women who'd been transferred to other cities, forced to change careers, or simply driven out of the workforce entirely. Each woman carried her own folder of evidence, her own story of survival, her own piece of the puzzle that would ensure Elliot Jerome never hurt anyone again. It's like a dam breaking, Agent Garland observed as she coordinated with her team to interview all the new witnesses. Once word gets out that it's safe to come forward, they all start talking. The television coverage had expanded to include financial analysts discussing the impact on Meridian Financial's stock price. The company had lost 40% of its value in the first hour of trading, and the board was calling emergency meetings to discuss management restructuring. Louise, Agent Garland called me over to her desk. I just got off the phone with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They want to know if you'd be willing to testify before a congressional committee about corporate trafficking and the need for stronger whistleblower protections. Congressional committee, this case is going to change how we investigate corporate crime. Your story, your courage, it's going to protect women across the country. I looked out the window at the news crews, at the protesters who'd begun gathering with signs reading "Justice for Louise" and "Protect Whistleblowers." This had started as one woman trying to save her job. Now it was becoming a movement. Yes, I said. I'll testify. Good. Because Louise, this is just the beginning. Elliot Jerome's network extends far beyond what we've uncovered so far. Taking him down was just the first step. The first step. I thought about all the women who were still trapped in similar situations, all the predators who thought they were untouchable, all the companies that enabled this kind of abuse. Elliot Jerome had been wrong about one thing. I hadn't just destroyed his empire, I'd started a revolution. The Federal Detention Center was a fortress of concrete and steel, designed to hold the most dangerous criminals while they awaited trial. I never thought I'd voluntarily walk into such a place. But here I was, sitting across from Elliot Jerome in a sterile visiting room,
separated by reinforced glass. He looked terrible. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his diminished frame, and his once perfect hair was disheveled and graying. But his eyes, those cold calculating eyes, were exactly the same. "Louise," he picked up the phone on his side of the glass. "I wondered when you'd come. I needed to see you one more time." To gloat? To see the mighty fallen? His smile was bitter. "Congratulations. You've destroyed everything I built." "No, Elliot, you destroyed everything you built. I just helped the world see what it really was." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the same predatory intensity he'd shown in his office. "Do you know what you've cost me? Not just my freedom, but my legacy, my life's work." "Your life's work was trafficking women, destroying careers, terrorizing anyone who tried to stop you. My life's work was maintaining order, providing structure, creating opportunities for women who understood their place in the world." Even now, facing life in prison, he couldn't see the truth of what he'd done. To him, the women he'd trafficked were willing participants. The careers he'd destroyed were necessary casualties. The lives he'd ruined were acceptable losses. "The other women are testifying," I said. "All of them. Sarah Chen, Jessica Martinez, 41 others. They're not afraid of you anymore. They should be. My network extends far beyond what you've uncovered. Even in here I have reach." "Not anymore." I pulled out a newspaper and pressed it against the glass. The headline read, "Meridian Network Collapses. Federal Raids Across 6 States Net 47 Arrests." His composure cracked just for a moment. "Impossible. Your associates started talking the moment they were arrested. Turns out loyalty doesn't mean much when you're facing 25 to life. You have no idea what you've unleashed," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The people I worked with don't forgive. They don't forget. You think you're safe because I'm in here. I think I'm safe because the whole world is watching now. Because 43 women found their voices. Because the FBI has your entire network under surveillance. This won't end with my conviction. There are others, more sophisticated operations. You've just painted a target on your back. Maybe. But I'm not the frightened employee you fired 6 months ago. I'm the woman who brought down your empire. And if others want to test me, they'll learn what you learned." I stood up, preparing to leave. "I didn't come here to gloat, Elliot. I came here to tell you that every woman you hurt, every life you destroyed, every career you ended, they all mattered. They all had value, and they all deserved better than what you gave them." "Louise, I'm not finished. You told me once that I needed you, that I could never survive without your company. You were wrong. I not only survived, I thrived. And so will every woman who comes after me." I hung up the phone and walked toward the exit, leaving him behind the glass. At the door, I turned back one last time. He was still sitting there staring at me with those cold eyes. But for the first time since I'd known him, Elliot Jerome looked like what he really was, a small, pathetic man who'd built his power on the suffering of others. As I walked out of the detention center into the afternoon sunlight, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete and total freedom. Elliot Jerome would spend the rest of his life in prison. His network was dismantled. His victims were finally getting justice. And I was done looking back. 6 months later, I stood in the marble lobby of the federal courthouse, watching the news crews pack up their equipment. The trial was over. Elliot Jerome had been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's words still echoed in my mind. "This court has rarely seen such a systematic pattern of exploitation and cruelty. The sentence must reflect not only the crimes committed, but the message we send to others who would prey upon vulnerable women." Agent Garland approached me, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. "It's over, Louise. Really over. What about the others? The network? 47 convictions across 6 states. The entire operation has been dismantled. More importantly, Congress passed the Corporate Accountability Act last month. Companies now face mandatory reporting requirements for harassment complaints, and there are federal penalties for retaliation against whistleblowers. The Corporate Accountability Act. Legislation that bore my name in the acknowledgments, born from the testimony I'd given to Congress about the systematic nature of corporate trafficking. It wasn't just about Elliot anymore. It was about changing the entire system that had protected him. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. Saw the news. Thank you for giving us all our voices back. Starting my own company next month, would love to discuss a partnership. Jessica Martinez had sent a similar message earlier. New job in Chicago. Real job, not the retail work he forced me into. I can finally breathe again. These messages had been arriving for months. Women across the country finding their courage, rebuilding their careers, reclaiming their lives. The network effect of justice. Louise? A familiar voice made me turn. It was Brianna Alvin, looking healthier than she had in months. The injuries from her accident had healed, but more importantly, the fear in her eyes was gone. Brianna, how are you feeling? Free, actually free for the first time in years. She paused. I testified at the congressional hearing last week about the culture of fear, about how many of us knew what was happening but were too scared to speak up. You found your voice. You gave me permission to use it. All of us. She gestured toward the courthouse steps, where a small group of women stood talking. Former Meridian Financial employees, women from other companies in the network, survivors who'd become advocates. We're starting a foundation, support for women who want to report workplace harassment and trafficking, legal aid, counseling, career rebuilding. We want to call it the Louise Garland Foundation. The weight of that honor nearly brought me to tears. I'm not comfortable with. You don't get to be uncomfortable with it, Brianna interrupted, smiling. You changed all our lives. You showed us that fighting back was possible. Let us honor that. Colleen approached our group, her detective badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. The corruption charges against her had been dropped within weeks of Elliot's arrest, once the FBI proved they were fabricated. But the experience had changed her, made her more determined to protect victims of corporate crime. Ready to go home? She asked me. Home. For months, that word had felt uncertain, temporary. I'd been living in safe houses, testifying at trials, speaking at conferences. But now, with Elliot behind bars and his network destroyed, I could finally build something permanent. Actually, I said, looking at the group of women around me, I think I'm ready to go forward. The past was behind us. The future was ours to create. And this time we were creating it together. 1 year later, I stood in the gleaming office of the Louise Garland Foundation, watching sunlight stream through windows that faced the same downtown district where Meridian Financial had once stood. The building had been demolished 6 months ago, replaced by a park dedicated to survivors of workplace violence. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as a handful of women supporting each other had become a national organization with offices in 12 cities. We provided legal aid, counseling, career rebuilding services, and most importantly, a safe space for women to find their voices. Louise, the Senate committee is ready for your testimony, my assistant informed me. I adjusted my jacket and walked toward the conference room where senators waited to hear about the Corporate Trafficking Prevention Act, the next piece of legislation we were pushing to strengthen protections for vulnerable workers. The woman in the mirror looked different from the one who'd been fired 18 months ago. Stronger, more confident. But the biggest change wasn't visible. It was the knowledge that I'd found my purpose. My phone buzzed with updates from foundation chapters across the country. A successful conviction in Denver, a whistleblower protection case won in Miami, a corporate policy change in Seattle that would protect hundreds of women. Each victory reminded me that Elliot's prediction had been wrong. He'd said that fighting back would destroy me. Instead, it had transformed me into someone I never knew I could be. Sarah Chen knocked on my door. Ready to change the world again? I smiled, gathering my testimony notes. The scared woman who'd once accepted harassment as part of corporate life was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that real power came not from controlling others, but from empowering them to control their own destinies. Let's go make some laws, I said. If you're listening to this story, chances are you recognize something in it. Maybe you've experienced harassment, discrimination, or retaliation at work. Maybe you've filed a complaint only to be ignored or punished. Maybe you've stayed silent because you were afraid of what speaking up would cost you. I understand that fear. I lived with it for 3 years, making excuses for unacceptable behavior, telling myself that keeping my job was worth sacrificing my dignity. I was wrong. Here's what I learned. They count on your silence. They depend on your fear. They build their power on your belief that you're powerless. But you're not powerless. You have more strength than you know. Standing up for yourself isn't easy. It requires courage, preparation, and often sacrifice. But the alternative, staying silent while others suffer, is worse. Every time you accept the unacceptable, you're not just enabling your own abuse, you're ensuring that the next person will face the same treatment. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Find allies who will support you. Remember that you're not alone, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. The system isn't designed to protect you, it's designed to protect itself. But systems can be changed. Laws can be written, cultures can be transformed. It starts with one person refusing to accept what's wrong. Your voice matters, your dignity matters. Your right to work without fear or harassment matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. The choice is yours. You can stay silent and hope someone else will fight your battles, or you can stand up and fight for yourself and others who need your courage. I chose to fight, and it changed everything. Now it's your turn. What will you choose?
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.